The problem with today's ecosystem, this whole ecosystem is very fragmented. I did my first startup when I was a standard 11th and managed to raise 3.5 lakh rupees. At that point of time, it was like a very huge amount of money.
But let's take an instance, I am a startup founder.
Yeah.
What will be the next steps that I need to follow?
If you have to see my entire career, it spans across balancing between working either for my own startup or for somebody else's startup. A 0 million revenue to a $5 million revenue in the span of 2 years. Is my idea viable to go into the market? Are there takers in the market? Are there buyers in the market? AI being AI, it cannot be 100% true.
Right.
At this stage at least.
Yeah. So when these things are available, why Htraction?
The only thing changed is aspirations to become an entrepreneur. My father has enough money to send me to school at least. One important thing that I always think of, that are you doing because you're capable or are you doing because you're comfortable? Most of the people who start, a person starts because he or she is very passionate about what he or she wants to do. Tech founders and non-tech founders, वो यहाँ से थोड़े से पागल होते हैं. It's a fact. Be very passionate and focused.
Hello everyone and welcome to the FEDPreneur show. Today we have a very special guest from a very small town in Jharkhand who went on to leading teams at big companies like UiPath and Active AI. And now he's on to the journey to make something of his own. Let's give a round of applause as we welcome Mr. Patankar sir, founder of Htraction and an alumnus of KIIT University of 2008 batch.
So firstly, I'd like you to introduce yourself to the team.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Patankar. KIIT alumni 2004-2008 batch. Computer science grad, been into the startup ecosystem for a very, very longer period of time. So my, if you have to see my entire career, it spans across balancing between working either for my own startup or for somebody else's startup. That's my whole career. Pertaining to technologies, I've been into automation domain for a very longer period of time. I'm sure most of the audiences who are listening to this podcast might have heard of a name called UiPath, which is into AI and robotics process automation. So I was heading their business for the Southeast Asia, based out of Singapore. And that's one of the major transformation that I've ever been part of. That time also it was a startup. So I can always correlate to all the things that I've done in the past and able to scale that startup from like a 0 million revenue to a $5 million revenue in the span of 2 years. Apart from that, my associations with other startups been primarily either establishing them from the grounds up or handling completely a new domain. So that's how my career have totally spanned out. In the last 1 year, this is what I'm building right now, called Htraction. It's my own startup, not working for somebody else's startup this time. And this is primarily for basis whatever I've seen in the entrepreneurial ecosystem. So we have come up with Htraction, which is basically catering to the aspiring entrepreneur. So the platform is meant for aspiring entrepreneur in the early stage startup, and then eventually building that ecosystem. So that's what and how I'm doing right now.
Okay, sir. So my next question would be, what is Htraction? Like, if you have to explain it in layman terms.
Sure. So if you see this whole entrepreneurial ecosystem, so for me, if you see these 4 stakeholders, person who wanting to become an entrepreneur who's doing something in that part, your mentors or the investors of that kind, and incubators like you have KIIT, TBI, and the service provider network. If I bring all these 4 key stakeholders into the one single room, to me that constitutes the ecosystem in one way. The problem with today's ecosystem, and I've been talking to a lot of young entrepreneurs these days as well, this whole ecosystem is very fragmented. And that's one of the biggest issue why you see, you may be hearing a lot of stats like 90% of the startup fails and most of the things. But there is one step before. And one step before is that 98% of the startup fails in the mind. Because when people start ideating, they first kill their idea in the brain without conceiving that or without taking even a single step of writing that idea down. And one of the key reasons why I believe is the ecosystem is not that supportive. I can discuss with my friends, but my friends may not be skilled enough to guide me into the idea that I'm thinking. Maybe, may not be. Maybe very supportive, maybe very smart enough to understand, but most of the time it did not happen. At least it didn't happen with me. So, and even if that person tried to connect to the mentors or of person of that stature, it is very difficult. So we thought the reason why, I mean, if you see it's a start that I was discussing with somebody that somebody was talking about, that India already has 100 unicorns, and they were very happy about it. But one of the key things that they missed, that there are many startups that can become unicorn, couldn't. Reason is why. And all things dates back and correlates back to the ecosystem. And we believe that all the reasonings of why things is not working, why things are fragmented, why people are unable to take the steps, is all because of this fragmentation. So we thought to pull every stakeholders into one singular platform. And that's what Htraction is all about.
Okay.
So it's a platform where these 4 stakeholders converges. Entrepreneurs, primarily aspiring in early stage, investors and the mentors, primarily catering to those kinds of startups, your incubators and your service network.
Okay.
One singular platform.
All right, that's great to know. So, sir, let's take an instance. I am a startup founder. I edited something on. So, what will be the roadmap for me? So, if I get it, I come to your platform, Htraction.
Yeah.
What will be the next steps that I need to follow?
See, so let me go back to what I said, that most of the time it happens that ideas are killed in the mind, or over a chai tapri or over a discussions, you generally kill that idea. One of the reason why it happens is because or take it this way, one of the biggest factor for an idea to take its shape or life is the validation of the idea.
Right.
Is my idea is viable to go into the market? Are there takers in the market? Are there buyers in the market? Is it a scalable business model or not? So the first thing that you do when you get into the platform is one, on the idea validations. So you can do idea validations 2 ways. One, we have built an AI model through which once you have put in the idea into a very structured way, the AI is smart enough to understand your idea, your domain, and able to bisect it and give you a complete report. And the purpose of AI model is not to say that it's a bad idea.
Right.
It's not at all. And the way we have designed it, it is not in a way that it says, at the start it will say, even if say suppose some ideas are not viable or not worth going to the market, it won't say in the sense that it is a bad idea. So it starts with a good note, and then it's start dissecting and bisecting key by key, side by side, and gives you complete report stating ki scalable hai ya nahi, marketable hai ya nahi, are there takers and buyers or not. GTM की strategy अगर आपने put किए, then it will also validate your GTM strategy and also gives its own strategy, and most importantly it gives you a recommendation.
Okay.
A recommendation in the sense, do your idea needs a tweaking, or the better GTM should be this way.
Okay.
But having said that, AI being AI, it cannot be 100% true.
Right.
At this
Of
stage
course.
at least.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever I and we all can boost about AI, it is still AI, artificial intelligence. So the second way to validate your idea is sharing that idea to the collaborators or the mentors in the platform. So who can be your collaborator? Your collaborators can be your peers, or your mentors can be people like me or somebody else who is part of the platform and offering the mentorship. So you can share your idea with those people and they can validate it. Now once it is validated and you now decided to take up that idea, now you can be a solopreneur, or you can be working with your friends as somebody else as a part of your idea or co-founder. You can add that person as a co-founder, or you can add other person as a collaborator in the platform. So you can form the complete team around that idea. Now having done that, you can later either using that idea apply to the incubator if you want, or take that idea to an angel investor, or give that idea to a service provider in terms of, this is the idea, this is the business plan, and this is how I want to incorporate my organizations, for example, legal entities. So around that idea, everything can be done. And eventually we are forming something called a Ventureverse, which will come in like next 3 months. So Ventureverse is a place where everybody can list their ideas / startups.
Okay.
And it is visible to all the mentors and investors in the platform. Now listing will have some compliances thing that the person has to do. But yeah, the Ventureverse is something that I'm very excited about.
Yeah, that sounds really like something different.
It is.
It is something very different.
It is.
Okay, sir, so this is a question that has been like coming to my mind continuously is, so you said So basically you have been in lead positions in different companies like UiPath and Active AI.
Yeah.
So to be like, if I'm saying it in direct terms, you have started with a startup at a later stage in life and not in college itself. So we are always, the college students are always in the rat race. Like, I need to do this fast, or somebody is going to overtake my idea, or somebody is going to overtake me.
Yeah.
So how to is college the best time to start with something like that? Like, do we have more time to start with a startup, or we take time with it, idea it properly, research on that, and then like grow and develop on it?
So just to like to rectify one point, I did my first startup when I was in standard 11th.
Okay.
So I started very early in life.
All right.
Now, if you take this correlation and if you take this analogy, that was too early to start when you are in standard 11th. And I'm starting when I'm 30 plus,
Right.
Late 30s actually. So there is no best time to start.
Okay.
I think the best time to start is when you have conceived something and you believe that it is good to go. So having started something in standard 11, there's no support, right? I mean, places like Jharkhand at that point of time, zero support. But we did at that point of time. So to answer in terms of when to start, I believe being in college is the best time to start.
Okay.
Or at least best time to start getting into that group. I mean, you guys are part of e-sales and working with a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs. You guys might yourself be an entrepreneur. So starting up at the college, I think, is the best time. Having said that, you can start any point of time.
Okay. All right. So, sir, what made you realize like you could build a platform like Htraction? Why I'm asking you this?
Yeah.
So now the startup culture is booming.
Yeah.
So like Indian individuals are like into it's like, okay, I can become an entrepreneur. I'll have the resources. There are cohorts being held. There are sessions like this. There are podcasts people can refer to. So when these things are available, why Htraction?
I'll take a step back.
Okay.
My startup before this was in 2012, where I, along with few people, started India's first entrepreneurship school. At that point of time, entrepreneurship was not even that culture.
Right.
So if you know, there are 1 year MBA classes where you come, you undergo the MBA courses. End of the courses, you take a job and you go tada bye bye. So we redesign this whole things into, you come with an idea, we'll filter that idea, and during this 1 year of course, we'll work on that idea. We'll ensure that idea take a life, and the end of the year, you have a live venture in your hand. That I did in 2012.
Okay.
2012 to 2024, I mean, when I incorporated this company, the only thing changed is aspirations to become an entrepreneur. What didn't change is the ecosystem, supporting ecosystem around it. It's still a problem.
Right.
And if you go back to what I was when I was describing about Htraction, the problem is not with the people who wanting to start up. The problem is with the support ecosystem, and that's why Htraction exists. Because the support system didn't change, and it is becoming more conservative. So even if you try connecting to few mentors on LinkedIn or few investors in the LinkedIn, things rotates. Otherwise, it's still a no.
Like, I can personally relate. I have like followed and messaged multiple mentors on LinkedIn, and there is never like, because it's like they are very professional people. They won't
they will
never
not
reply back. So yeah.
Sometimes I believe they also receiving a lot of messages.
Yeah.
So it's also their priority to respond to not. But if you are quoting yourself as an enabler of the ecosystem, and if you're not supporting, then I believe it's a problem.
Okay, so sir, can you talk about the startup that you like started with in your class 11? Like, how was it? What was the experience? What did you learn?
So it was an accidental startup. Because we didn't know at that point of time कि startup क्या होता है. We had no idea. It's all about that you wanted to do something for the society around. And I was living in a very small town in Jharkhand called Giridih. And around that there was a lot of tribal childs and all. So one day while going to school, I saw few very small kids running around, and then I realized that my father has enough money to send me to school, at least being part of lower middle class family. But capable enough to send me to schools, but for them it is very difficult to afford an education. So I started something called a setup called Aggressor. I was हमारे स्कूल में उस टाइम संस्कृत भी पढ़ाया जाता था, so we knew words in Sanskrit. So Aggressor means stepping forward. So we started something called Aggressor primarily to cater to the educations of all these kids. But in order to do that, you have to have somebody to take care of the education, somebody to come and teach. I can't because I was doing my own education at that point of time. So, and in those areas, the town, there were a lot of steel industries, and they were like big fat steel industries.
Right.
So I went across, spoke to the managers, gone up to the accountants, then senior managers, then the owners of those organizations, and managed to raise 3.5 lakh rupees. At that point of time, it was like a very huge amount of money. And using that fund, I used to hire teachers, give them salaries in the sense in exchange for their time for the education. So that is something that I did.
Okay, that is actually crazy.
Yeah,
Okay,
it was
so
interesting.
sir, another question. It is very important in a startup to have a good set of people in your team.
Yeah.
Otherwise, a startup wouldn't like be blooming or whatever, like won't reach the height you're expecting it to be. So, but sometimes we forget accountability. Like it's like if our family members are involved in that startup, or you are taking friends in the startup, and then instead of accountability, it becomes more like a familiar relation. You're not able to be strict with them, or you are unable to order them around. So, like, how do we challenge these problems? Like, what would you suggest should be done about it? Like, should we take into people who we know, or should we completely go like recruit some other like random people or strangers who are more efficient than?
It's a very tricky question actually.
Right.
And to be honest, there is no right or wrong answers to it. But in order to answer that, I think we have to take a step before and think why you are doing a startup.
Right.
If you have an answer to that why you are doing the vision and the values that you want to do, I think accumulating the right set of people becomes very easy. Now that right set of people can be your friends, can be your family members, can be a complete stranger, it doesn't matter. One thing that the startup founders, the early startup founders and young people should always understand, that when you enter the premise of a startup, it can be a physical structure or it can be like the work structure. You should leave all your relations behind.
Right.
Because what you're doing at that point of time is only for the impact of that startup and why you started there. And to answer that before, there's one important thing that I always think of, that are you doing because you're capable or are you doing because you're comfortable? It's a very important question, because if you're capable, you will not compromise on the kind of people you want to attract. But if you're comfortable, you will become very nerdy in that time, that okay, I'll take only those people I know.
Right.
But having said that, when people join the startup, either as a founder, co-founder, or as an employee, the assessment alignment becomes the key. And it happens with me. One of my startup failed because of the kinds of co-founders that we had. It's not a problem of the actual, because they were really talented people. But because their skill set, our skill set, maybe their age group, our age group didn't match.
Okay.
So that was one of the biggest problems, that your thought process is not aligning to, I was very young at that point of time.
Okay.
Your thought process is not aligning to their thought process. Your vision and their vision is completely clashing. So I think your own assessment becomes the key. And to me, it doesn't matter. They are friends, they are family members, they are strangers. Till the time the skill sets are aligned in terms of a complementary skill set, and you believe that that is the right person to do that part, the rest doesn't matter.
Okay, so so you have led teams in big startup, those companies which are startup like UiPath and Activate. So what have you learned from there, and which you have already implementing in Htraction?
Two things. Three things, and that becomes a pillar of my work ethics now in terms of. One is, you dream boldly. Don't compromise on the dream. Now, dream can be about your project, the dream can be about your startup, the dream can be about a very smaller team that you have. The second one is execute relentlessly. Do not compromise there. And the third thing is people first leadership. I think if you have these three combinations, and that's always I follow, either I worked in an organization or I worked in my own startup or I worked for somebody else's startup. Dream boldly, execute relentlessly, and people first leadership. Just three things. That's my core learning in life. Now you can take this learning and put it into a very smaller setup or put it into a very large setup. The ethics, the pillars always remain the same.
Right. Okay. Okay. This is one of my personal
Sure.
questions. So should we build a startup based on our passion? Is that like a good thing? Because something which we are passionate about, we do it because we like to do that.
Yeah.
But once we start doing it repeatedly, it becomes a monotonous task, and then it becomes like, okay, I've been doing it repeatedly, now I don't feel good about it, and then you just drop it off.
Yeah.
So would you suggest we base it on passion, or make it something which is like, okay, so there is a problem that exists and I need to solve that?
It's a little contradictory statement. Reason why? Because if there is a passion, there will not be a loss of
Right.
things.
Right.
Tough to answer actually, but most of the people who start, I mean, you can see a lot of interviews of the founders and they'll say, I wanted to create impact, value creation for the society. That is secondary. A person starts because he or she is very passionate about what he or she wants to do. Very simple. Society values comes later. Because of passionate ho, that's why you start. And then that passion leads to the value creation to the society. But you always start because जो typical founders होते हैं ना, डिपेंड टेक फाउंडर्स एंड नॉन टेक फाउंडर्स वो यहाँ से थोड़े से पागल होते हैं इट्स अ फैक्ट. वो पागल इसलिए नहीं होते क्योंकि दे वुड लाइक टू मेक दैट आउटलुक लुक्स लाइक दैट heroic. It's not that. It's because they are so much involved in the thought, so much passionate about, and not letting it go. You'll see a lot of places where people say don't get attached to an idea, and it's all theory. It never happens. When time comes, things happens, but people do because they are very, very passionate about, they want to do this, and then value creation comes later. So and trust me, if you have that passion, it will never go down, never. Because then you are thinking about it day in, day out, and you will never let it go. You will find ways and means and people who can help you take it forward or drive it, even if it is failing. You know you have to take, because it's very easy for a founder to take a step back and leave when things are not well, and that's where the passions are tested. You started because of your passion, or you started because that's a way which is going on.
Now coming to a more personal question.
Sure.
So see, it's very important to have a support system when you are like trying to do something in life. So how has your support system been since when you were in college? Like, it could be parents, it could be friends, it could be.
So, as I said, we belongs to a lower middle class family. Naukri is the only thing that
Of course.
your parent understand. But they've been very supportive in the sense, उनको ऐसा लगता था कि अगर ये करना चाहता है, then let him try. Fail करेगा तो देख लेंगे.
Okay.
So that is one good thing that I had about my parents. My wife is my childhood friend.
Okay.
She's been knowing me since standard 3. So we have a very common understanding of, she understands my passion and I understand her, what she wanting in life. So we have a very common ground that she knows, और she knows that ये इंसान पागल है, इसको करने दो, इसको रोक के फायदा नहीं है. So we have a very, very good common understanding because we've been knowing it for a very longer period of time. So on family side, I've been very blessed, been very supportive. Either the parents, my sisters, my wife, all very supportive.
That is great. Like most, that is actually rare as well.
Yeah,
because
it is.
In my instance, some families do not support. And
Yeah.
it's like, and also because in case if it is like too much, it's like a private college.
Yeah.
Parents are paying a high amount. It's become more of like a, okay, so they have this much. I need to fulfill their wishes. I need to get a job done. So there's that. Coming to that, so now it's placement season and everything, and there are students like us who would like to start a startup, but they aren't getting the courage. They are like, parents are forcing me to get a job, but my mind isn't there.
Yeah.
So what would be your like suggestion, advice? Like
See, I've been always advocate of getting good experiences. So either you go get a job or you work for somebody else in a startup.
Okay.
Experience always counts. Many times people discount that factor, but I believe if you have an experience, your chances of success in a startup it multiplies.
Right.
If you are in a stage where you believe that your idea can really take a shape and you have a choice between the placements and this, go for your idea. But if you're still working on that idea and it's still not like in the final stage where you believe you can launch it, go take a job.
Okay.
Job always helps. It's also because if you build a company and you have never known how that company is, being, culture, people, it's not that you can't do, but it will be a tougher journey.
Okay.
Having that experience eases your life.
Right.
But again, if you are in a state where you believe you can launch your idea and you can successfully take it off, go for it. Else take a job. From job, you can always reinforces that I don't want to do a job.
Huh.
Once you are doing a job, it sometimes reinforces that startup hi bhala hai.
And so one advice to the young entrepreneurs out there.
Be very passionate and focused. I think one thing which I believe, not criticizing, but I believe focus is something that is missing a lot.
Okay.
They're passionate, but they're not focused. It creates a lot of problems. Having focus is the key. Focus is something that I believe the current sets of people are missing. It's not that they can't, but it's just they have to pull it back.
Thank you so much, sir, for
Thank you.
joining our podcast. We were
Pleasure.
it was a pleasure to host you here. So,
Pleasure is mine. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Well, that was an empowering session by Mr. Patankar sir. We hope that you enjoyed it and learned something new. Like, share and subscribe our channel FEDKIIT and stay tuned for more updates. Till then, goodbye.